Hello and welcome. I'm Leanne Gerrans and you're watching W News Extra, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. An independent United Nations inquiry has concluded that Israel has committed genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. President Trump is set to arrive in the UK for an unprecedented second state visit, but protests could overshadow his trip. And the UK Prime Minister faces significant pressure in his firing and hiring of Peter Mandelson, the now ex-UK ambassador to the United States. Now, a commission established by the United Nations says Israel has committed genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. It is the first time that such an explosive allegation has been made publicly by a UN body. Israel's foreign ministry said it categorically rejects this distorted and false report. To discuss this and all of today's stories, I'm joined by Al Arabiya editor Wissam Keyrouz and managing director of This Is Dubai, Michael Jabri-Pickett. Wissam and Michael, thank you so much for joining me in the studio, and also nice to have you back in Dubai with us, Wissam.
Nice to be with you.
Great to be
in person.
In person, exactly. Yeah. We just want to talk about what we're hearing today. We're hearing the UN Commission have basically come out and said, as I said in the intro, Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, an accusation, of course, Israel has strongly denied today. How seriously do you think this report will be taken?
I think Israel is not taking seriously anything coming from the United Nations, let alone a report by a commission. And whatever is happening in Gaza, whether it is genocide or not genocide, it is being streamed live on every single TV in the world, and every person in this world can see what's happening. We are seeing images of apocalyptic dimensions. These things we haven't seen in the world, not even maybe in World War II. I mean, the intensity of the images. And yet we see that Israel can go on with impunity, is not stopping. And also we see the people in charge within Hamas also not stopping. So it is a very, very unfortunate, violent situation, and it's continuing. And the great majority of countries in the United Nations recognize a state of Palestine, and it doesn't count. As long as Israel has the support of America, which counts most, nothing will change.
But it's quite interesting because earlier I spoke to Asher Friedman, former Israeli strategic affairs official and executive director of the Miskav Institute for National Security. I asked him what he made of the UN's report. Just take a listen.
This report should not be taken seriously. They've relied entirely on information provided by Hamas while ignoring detailed and documented information provided by both the Israeli government and independent authorities, showing that their claims are false. This is just another report in the long history of biased UN reports against Israel. If the UN said tomorrow the world is flat, there would be a commission that issued a detailed report proving that fact.
Yeah.
The world is not flat, but Gaza, unfortunately, is flat.
Yeah, unfortunately, and that's not a laughing matter. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And it's not a laughing matter, but it's what we're hearing coming out of Israel time and time again. When we hear from the UN Commission, when the UN releases a report, when any of the health organizations who are trying to get food to people, it's denial. And I think people are becoming increasingly frustrated with this.
You know, you said something really true. It's being streamed on our phones. And there's a very famous US Supreme Court justice who said that I might not be able to define pornography, but I know it when I see it. And I think while the international scholars of genocide scholars have said that, you know, from a legal definition, what's happening in Gaza does represent genocide. I think that we all, as we've watched it, have recognized that this is genocide. And what is most frustrating about this is governments around the world continue to either remain quiet or they slightly criticize Israel. And yet the people, the demonstrations in so many countries, in so many different parts of the world, are so overwhelmingly in favor of trying to end this, because what the Palestinians in Gaza are going through is horrific. And we see it on an hourly basis every time we pick up our phone. And every time you scroll to a news site, it'll say, you know, a warning that there's a graphic image. And of course, it's a graphic image of a Palestinian, inevitably, it's a Palestinian child, who you can tell is malnourished, who you can tell is starving. And I've grown up in an era when what we usually see are images like that in Africa. And so we know that that's a genocide and that's famine. This is a man-made famine, and it's also a genocide.
And also what is very striking in the imagery itself, of course the image of starvation are very, very strong, especially when it comes to kids. I mean, why the children? But at the same time, it's the images of people movements, people moving from a place to another in an already very small place every couple of weeks. And it's like a people on constant departure from a place to another. This is, for war reasons, okay? And now the very city of Gaza is being emptied as we speak. And we see tens of thousands of people leaving the houses, leaving the buildings that in occurrence are being, bombed and destroyed to go somewhere else they don't know where. And with this very, very deep feeling that maybe we will never come back again. So we are spending a lot, the world community is spending a lot of energy on the definition, genocide, on a technical term. What is happening doesn't need a technical term. Maybe for jurists and people in the law world, they need this word to take action accordingly. But even if they have a definition, no action will be taken. So we are putting a lot of energy not in the right place. It's not about the word, it's about seeing what's happening. It's there. It doesn't have a name.
It doesn't have a name, and like you said, technical terms has taken up a lot of the conversation, Wissam, but I don't know if both of you have this feeling, what comes next? What can stop Israel? What can help the people of Gaza? These are the big questions that no one seems to have the answer for. Right, the full occupation of Gaza City is going ahead. Israel said they were going to do this, but what happens after the end of that occupation?
But I think we all know what the answer is. We need the US president to get on the phone with Benjamin Netanyahu and to tell him to stop. That's the only way, and we all recognize that. It doesn't matter what Spain says, what Canada says, the UK or France. What matters is the president of the United States, whoever it is, Joe Biden, Donald Trump. Now it's Donald Trump. And if we look at what the Israeli prime minister has done, 5 countries he's bombed, as well as the destruction of Gaza. He's bombed a US ally in Qatar. There are no repercussions. So when the Gulf states look at that, they get a little bit concerned because they wonder, are we next? If we turn out to be on the bad side of the Israelis, what will happen? So for the Israelis and the IDF to stop doing what they're doing in Gaza, the only way it's ever going to happen is if Donald Trump gets on the phone and actually says to him, this is it. Because the global community can come together and they can talk about supporting the Palestinian statehood, and they can talk about maybe not selling arms to Israel, but that is small in comparison to what needs to be done.
One of the greatest unfortunate of this conflict is that in both sides we have some kind of non-logic. For Hamas, they are fighting in a logic that is not logical for most of the world. So for someone who is logical within the world community, you know when you lose and you stop. But when you fight on a purely ideological basis, like Hamas itself, unlike the Palestinian Authority, who has a completely different narrative, you cannot say that I'm defeated, and hence, even if you are defeated, you win. So there's no logic. And on the Israeli side, you have people, and very influential people in the government, who think they are in front of a historic moment where they can change things forever. And this is not a fringe. This is in the government. This is a major idea that is guiding the very policies of this government. The fact that now it's a time where you can change things forever, and maybe you can have a Gaza without people. And people believe this in the Israeli government.
And the sad thing is it's the civilians that always suffer. And I just want to say thank you so much for your thoughts on that. Stay right there as we move on to another story. And President Trump is expected in the UK for an unprecedented second state visit. He boarded Air Force One earlier today with the First Lady and will land in London this evening. They'll spend the night at Windsor Castle's estate before meeting the King and Queen tomorrow. The US President spoke to reporters before embarking on the journey. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Well, my relationship is very good with the UK, and Charles, as you know, who's now king, is my friend. And it's the first time this has ever happened where somebody was honored twice, so it's a great honor. And this one's at Windsor. They've never used Windsor Castle for this before. They used Buckingham Palace. And I don't want to say one's better than the other, but they say Windsor Castle is the ultimate, right? So it's going to be nice. But basically, I'm there also on trade. They want to see if they can refine the trade deal a little bit. We made a deal, and it's a great deal.
I must say something, Michael and Wissam. I agree with him. I spent a lot of time in Windsor. I spend pretty much every weekend there. And I do think Windsor Castle is the greatest. There we are, President Donald Trump, just in case you were worried. Windsor is a fabulous place to go. We've been waiting for this visit, haven't we, Michael, since it was announced in February. Remember when Starmer was in the Oval Office and he got out the envelope and the invitation from King Charles, and Donald Trump was just so delighted. Right. Is Donald Trump more powerful this time around? 6 years ago, he was in the UK. Is he in a better position now?
So compared to 6 years ago, he is definitely more powerful. He's more knowledgeable. He knows how to game the system.
More assertive also.
Absolutely. But he's also, in the first term, he was very careful to make sure that he picked people who maybe had the same ideological bent as he did, so that he was surrounded by like-minded people who were experts in their respective fields. Now what he's done is he's surrounded himself by people who aren't experts, but are loyalists. And he knows that he can push through so much because of his personality and because he's surrounded by people in his cabinet who are loyal to him. He also, unlike in 2019, he has the Supreme Court, he has the House, he has the Senate. He also has a very powerful mega base, and he also has right-wing podcasters who I think help spread the message that he is doing great work, and he's also able to bring all of these different factions together so that they, at the very least, they're defending what he does. Now, he may be more unpredictable. I think if we look at the tariffs just as one example, he is more unpredictable. And that, I think, means that when people are wanting to engage with him in a situation like this, they have to bend the knee. They have to show him that he is king of the castle.
But then I think the UK's doing that. If we have a look, I've just been looking at the schedule of Donald Trump's visit and everything that will be happening for him. Pomp and ceremony is just basically what England do best. It's absolutely phenomenal. They're really going all out. He's going to have a fly past by the Red Arrows, which is just something phenomenal. There's going to be a carriage procession.
Yes.
He's going to meet Princess Kate and Prince William. He's going to meet the Queen, the King. It's going to be all out.
Whoever organized the program of this visit understands Donald Trump very, very well and uses the amazing tool that is in the hand of the UK government and the United Kingdom, that it can pamper a certain president, whoever he is, in such a way that he will feel part of this huge, amazing legacy that is the British royalty. Now, having said this, also Trump is coming and he is pampering the royal traditions with some of his greatest lines, like when he say that, talking about the king, and he calls him Charles, and he say, I think he represents the country so well. He's such an elegant gentleman, and he say that he's a friend since long time. So you have the world of Trump, which is, very, very, golden and brilliant, and Trump.
And it's very flamboyant.
Very flamboyant, meeting the real flamboyance, the understated flamboyance. It's the clash of the titans, the clash of the two worlds. That is the Anglo-Saxon world. It's America in its very essence, and England and Britain in its very elegance. And this is very interesting. It's not about politics. Politics is going to be with Keir Starmer and with the meeting, which is happening also in the countryside. But with the meeting in Windsor, it's going to be about telling Donald Trump, you are getting a feast bigger than Emmanuel Macron, bigger than anyone else, and he will be very happy, I'm sure.
I also think, sorry to interrupt you, I also think that it nicely contradicts and explains and defines the differences between Donald Trump. Look at the months that went into preparing for this, compared to the weeks, maybe, that went into Vladimir Putin's visit to Alaska. And that was one of the criticisms, of course, is that why would...
days, maybe.
Maybe.
The days, yeah.
Why would you have the Russian president coming with not enough already agreed upon? And you had a war that is still raging, and that seems to be less of a priority from both sides compared to having a state visit where Donald Trump is praised for being Donald Trump.
But remember, the UK also have to put up all the flags in Windsor. And I don't know if you've ever been to Windsor, but all the shops are full of plates with the royal family on, and it's a really fabulous place.
I've been to Windsor and to Buckingham, but I tend to think like Trump that Windsor is the better place.
I'm with Trump on this. But just a quick thought before we move on. Soft power is something the royal family have in the UK. And I was just wondering, because I spoke to somebody a little bit earlier, Freddie Gray, on the show earlier, and he said, really, Donald Trump is going to stick to the art of the deal. So even though he'll have soft power and influence from the royal family, when he does meet Keir Starmer in Chequers, he's not going to waver on the trade deal. He's not going to make any concessions. In many respects, Trump knows what he wants. Do you agree with that? Or do you think the soft power will kind of speak to the man, Donald Trump?
I think you and I are in agreement. The man,
we agree to disagree with this opinion.
No, please disagree with me. Yes.
The soft power is what I think Donald Trump is best persuaded to follow. Yeah. He is a man who, with gifts, with planes, with praise, with being presented with the biggest, the largest, the best. These are, I think, the calling cards that seem to catch his eye the most. And I think he is very easily swayed by the soft power.
He is much more persuaded and guided by soft power than by hard power. And even when we talk about Vladimir Putin, it's about the personality. It's about his cult of the person, not about the power of Russia itself. It's all about what he takes as a person. It's very personal in Trump's world. And it's going to be a very important occasion for journalists to see how everything unfolds, whether in Windsor or with Keir Starmer, where it's going to be a little bit more political.
No, it's going to be absolutely fascinating. Thanks for your thoughts on that. Now, let's move on to another story, which is related. The British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, is facing massive pressure from his own MPs over his hiring of the former UK ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson. Starmer previously defended Mandelson in the Commons, despite being made aware of emails exchanged between the former Labour minister and the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Questions are now being asked about Starmer's leadership, with the opposition leader Kemi Badenoch accusing him of lying to Parliament and also to the public. Wissam, I don't know right now what the answer is for Keir Starmer. He has been under immense pressure for a long time. We've seen 11 MPs leave his cabinet, some related to quite serious scandals. The heat is on him over Peter Mandelson. No one is taking the foot off the gas when it comes to this. Is there any way that he can come out of this politically unscathed?
Keir Starmer?
Yes.
Keir Starmer, well, the very internal dynamics of UK politics, they will use, the opponents are using this to have a storm around Keir Starmer. But it's part of the internal, culture of doing politics. But seeing it from outside, Peter Mandelson is a veteran politician. Seen from inside, he is a bit dark. He has a lot of, negative stories going around him. From outside, he has been the EU commissioner for 5 years. He is a prominent politician. And he is now in this huge storm called Jeffrey Epstein, who is like an octopus hitting right and left everywhere, from Donald Trump to the king himself and his brother, and now to... So it's a big story. Epstein is an octopus. He has been in contact with everyone. Now, in the details, the problem is that Mandelson has been in contact with the Epstein world after he was, in his troubles, and he cannot say that I didn't know. Now we will see how much. I mean, it's going to be, of course, damaging, but within limits, I think. It's not going to be the collapse of the government or anything. This is what I think.
I think that's an interesting view to take, because I do think in the UK, the main questions are about Keir Starmer's judgment, and that's a really big concern over the Deputy Leader, Angela Rayner, over Peter Mandelson and his appointment, because the vetting process is what's in question. But I wonder if he can survive this, or if he's just basically one drama away from...
Do you vet someone like Peter Mandelson? I mean, he is, I mean, too known to be vetted. I mean, I don't know about this Epstein case, but if you are a prime minister forming your administration, Peter Mandelson is a natural candidate.
But then he also was always linked to Epstein, and that should be a red flag for people to vet someone that they're putting in as the US ambassador.
Of course. But, the Epstein case is a very curious case, and it won't unfold very, very, very soon.
And I think this is one of the, I think there's a couple of issues at play, but I think that that's one of them. I think that politicians who are being affected, as well as powerful people who have yet to be affected that we know of, I think they're surprised at the staying power of Epstein files in the summer of 2025. I mean, he died more than 5 years ago. And I think many people thought that when that death occurred, this would go away. But now it's come back. And isn't it interesting that the first person to lose their job over it has been a British politician, not anyone in the States. And it was in America that we thought that's where those politicians would be the ones that would really have to suffer the consequences. But I also think that getting to someone like Mandelson, it's one of the issues with some of these Gen Z protest movements that happened in Sri Lanka, Indonesia, most recently in Nepal, is that he represents that status quo that the young are fed up with. And you brought up a really good point. Do you need to vet somebody who's been in so many senior positions for so long? Yeah. And you almost think you just have to rubber stamp him. He's survived with so many other administrations. Surely he'll be fine. Surely there's nothing in his closet. When in fact, what needs to happen is you need to sort of step back and start evaluating who is it that you're bringing in. And if it's the same status quo, then you need to reevaluate, because I think people around the world nowadays, they look at, again, what's going on in Gaza and the criticism of Israel. They want to sort of reassess everything. And when you have somebody who represents the old guard, that's the first red flag. Never mind the fact that he had a relationship with Epstein. The first red flag is, why are we going down this road and rehashing the same old, same old?
Absolutely. And the generational issue is very relevant. And it's not only in the UK, it's everywhere in the world. I mean, people are now asking the question whether it's the rise of a new world with a new generation that necessitates, it needs different rules, different mentality. And maybe what's happening is somewhere related to this as well. I mean, rethinking why those veterans should always be there. I mean, shouldn't we be finding, the people who represent best the values of the new generation? But I do think, to be back to the Epstein, case, it is very complicated and it is being used. Not used, but it's there always to make problems and things that are not related to it at all. So maybe it opens the door to being used.
And it's very difficult when it comes to the Epstein files, because when Donald Trump was running to be president for the second time,
he said he will, yeah.
And it wasn't just him, right? It was J.D. Vance. It was Kash Patel, who heads the FBI. It was the number 2 at the FBI, Dan Bongino, when he was a podcaster. It was Pam Bondi, and she's the Attorney General now. These are the people that are in the ideal position so that they can release everything.
But maybe it's to do with intelligence. It's something we'll never know. But, you made a really good point, and I was thinking about this. Peter Mandelson, I covered politics as a younger journalist in England, and obviously Peter Mandelson came up a lot, and you said maybe don't vet him for the reasons is he's held so many top positions. And of course, Peter Mandelson became famous because he was sort of the man who was responsible for getting Tony Blair into power in that landslide Labour election. We can't forget that. And when I think of Mandelson, we think of that. But the reality is, maybe Keir Starmer took this gamble on Mandelson because he knows how to charm Donald Trump. He's the old guard of politician. But the big question is, will the gamble work out? Will it be okay in the end? Because he got this tariffs deal, he helped set up the second state visit. So maybe it wasn't all bad.
And I think the Prime Minister can be blinded by the positives. Right? If somebody comes to you and tells you some negatives about somebody who you believe in, I think it's your natural inclination as humans is to sort of say, that's okay, it won't be a big issue, or I could deal with it, or we'll handle the fallout when it happens. But he has these wonderful positives. And you're already predisposed to believe in the positives rather than to question the negatives. And I think someone like Mandelson, who came in and was successful early on, and now this has happened. And again, it goes back to an earlier point, which is that the Prime Minister probably thought the Epstein stuff has gone away. It's not so much of a red flag anymore. This is what he can do for us moving forward, and I know he'll be effective. When really what he should have done is, I can't go down that road because of his connection with Jeffrey Epstein, and that's going to make sure that I'm very aware that we're not going to take any chance, regardless of the relationship that he might have with Donald Trump.
And once again, it comes down to Keir Starmer's judgment. And many people in the UK and MPs were saying that he doesn't have a good judgment. And this has been a lot of the problem in his leadership in the last year. Let's move on to another story now. And Tyler Robinson, the suspect accused of killing right-winged influencer Charlie Kirk, has appeared in court today. Prosecutors in Utah are charging the 22-year-old with aggravated murder. If found guilty, Robinson could face the death penalty. Michael, Tyler Robinson will be in court today. Details are still emerging about possible motives. But Charlie Kirk, he had powerful friends, and we know that he was big when it came to the MAGA base. Are we likely to see the death penalty and real significant punishment if he is found guilty?
So in Utah, the death penalty is on the table, especially for, there are 7 charges against him. Aggravated murder is the top. It's the worst for Tyler Robinson. And, the president last week was on Fox and asked, and he said that he hopes that the death penalty is what is administered. I think because it's happening in a Republican state, a conservative state, I think that also could, unfortunately for Tyler Robinson, after, I'm sure, years of appeals and whatnot, he could be facing lethal injection or the electric chair. I'm not sure which it is in Utah. But the bigger issue for me, I think, is what punishment that the American people could be facing right now at this time, because there seems to be such strong rhetoric on both sides. You know, there are some on the Democratic side and the Republican side who are trying to come together to make, and Spencer Cox, the governor of Utah, I think has been fantastic. I think he's led by example. His language has been very clear, and he's been encouraging people to not retaliate, to make sure that they are focused on having conversations, much like Charlie Kirk always did, right? He was always somebody, regardless of what you believed about what he said, he was always willing to debate. And I think it's important that, you know, the American people recognize that there are a lot of common areas that they can come together, and that's what they need to focus on now, rather than the divisive issues that seem to be getting a lot of media attention.
I think that the Charlie Kirk case represents and embodies the very problems of America, the vertical division of a nation from up to down. As he embodies also, I mean, that the right, or what he represents, the right movement, is a real grassroots movement that comes from down to up. And that Donald Trump is the fruit of that movement, and he is not the instigator of that movement. And also Charlie Kirk is somehow the person, or one of the persons, who are giving a certain intellectual texture to the MAGA movement and to this grassroots movement. Let's not forget that Charlie Kirk is, first and foremost, he is a religious activist. I mean, he is what we can call the new breed of televangelist. He is Christian, Protestant, and whether we like what he says or we don't like, this is a person who only had words and a microphone, that's it, and debate. He never, you know, he was not involved in violence. And in advanced countries and societies, we should not be accepting any kind of violence anyway. And at the same time, Charlie Kirk, his death will have a lot of invigorating factor to the base of Donald Trump. It has an effect. He had an effect before, and his death will have an effect, of course.
And I think we talk about America becoming more divided after the murder of Charlie Kirk, and this is something that's been a hot topic and a hot debate. But I wonder right now if unity can happen, and unity does happen from the top. So I wonder if it's Donald Trump who will be the person to bring things together in many respects. And that's probably what America needs right now in light of this happening.
I certainly think that that's what America needs. I don't think that, based on what he's said so far, I don't think Donald Trump is comfortable taking that sort of leadership role, specifically about bringing people together. You know, in the past, U.S. presidents have talked about, you know, I am not the president of the people who voted for me. I am the president of America and Americans. And, you know, in the first few hours after news of Charlie Kirk's assassination was breaking, Donald Trump talked about the radicalized left. Say what you will about that, believe it or don't believe in that movement, but that's not going to help people come together. That's not going to help diffuse a situation. You need somebody who is, I'm going to mention him again, but Spencer Cox was doing a wonderful job where he was talking about, you know, making sure that we are recognizing what brings us together and makes us have commonality rather than what separates us.
If we take the discussion a little bit on a wider scale, I think it's going to be increasingly more difficult, not only in America, but anywhere in the world, to get to unity and to unification within this context of very wild freedom of expression on social media. I mean, we are all advocates of freedom of expression, but there is a place where the world is now where it has never been before. This very open space of people saying anything, anywhere, about anything. This is new in the dynamics of human societies, of political movements. And this is definitely has something to do with the fact that there's a lot of difficulty in finding union and unity anywhere in the world. Name it. Name any country in the world. Wherever, I mean, people are divided on ideas, on ethnicities, on anything. And whenever there is a division, this new climate and this new technology is making things much, much harder.
What's also making it so difficult now is that it's not enough that we disagree. There has to be almost a vitriolic approach to each other.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
have
right.
to publicly denounce the other person.
Yes.
And that, I think, is one of the
I
issues.
have to make a show about me,
Yeah.
not about disagreeing with you. I have to make it flamboyant. I have to make it attractive, and even go further than where you went.
And we're just going to have to wrap this up. Sorry, we are slightly running out of time, but I do agree with you. I think, you know, social media in the hours and days after the murder of Charlie Kirk was absolutely vile. And I think a lot of people and a lot of the world were saying we need to police ourselves on things like this, but a really interesting conversation. And it's the time of the show where Wissam and Michael have chosen two of their quirky stories of the day. And Wissam, yours was all about paying respects to the late, great Robert Redford, who did sadly pass away today.
Robert Redford, one of the icons of cinema, one of the heavyweights of Hollywood, of the world of art, has passed today. Fortunately, he has left a great legacy, and he lived for almost 90 years. And I want to ask you, what is your favorite movie for Robert Redford?
For me, I would nominate two. For sure, at the top of the list, it would be 1973's The Sting.
Yeah.
And then the second probably would be The Natural.
Yes. What about you?
One, Indecent Proposal. That is actually one of my favorite films. I absolutely love that film.
It's very interesting because most of the critics, when they speak about the legacy of Robert Redford, they would speak about the great movies like The Great Gatsby, where he looked amazing, like you said, and about, a lot of other movies. But if you speak to people, they seem to be fascinated with the movie that Leanne is fascinated with. It's The Indecent Proposal. It's such a twist of a movie where it takes the narratives to the confines of the human psychology. And apparently people are very, very, very touched by this story till now and by the charm of Robert Redford.
And I watched it recently again because it was on TV, and I just remembered how much I loved it. And I loved Demi Moore and Robert Redford in it.
Demi Moore was amazing.
He was incredible in it. And now, Michael, it's on to yours. And it's bad news for people who like matcha tea. Wissam told us he's been drinking lots of matcha.
Lots of matcha recently. I thought it was, a hype, and then I kind of like it.
He's bought into
I love
the
it,
hype.
especially with coconut milk.
So what's happened is that in the US, sales are up 86% compared to 3 years ago. Now, usually that would be a good thing, but because there's such an intensive labor process involved in making the powder that is what becomes the matcha ingredient, and because of the tariffs, because the highest quality matcha comes from Japan, and they have higher tariffs now than they did before. And then, to a lesser degree, some of the lesser quality stuff comes from China, which of course is also dealing with high tariffs. The American consumer in particular may be facing some issues over the next couple of years. They will have to make decisions about how much they're willing to spend when it comes to matcha, because there is going to be considerable price increase. You also have to realize that I think social media has played a part. People have seen it on social media. They like the calming effect that it has. It has less caffeine than coffee. It also has antioxidants, which are helpful for the body. So people have fallen in love with it because of how it's presented on social media and because of some of the benefits and maybe even because of some of the taste. But the price is going to be going up. And one California tea buyer said that he's paying 75% more than what he previously paid. So it's a real issue, and consumers are going to have to figure out where they're prepared to spend their money.
It's too matcha.
It's too matcha.
It's too matcha.
It's too matcha.
But in the same time, recently we have very serious studies suggesting that matcha will take out the iron from your system. So not too much. Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's nearly time for bed. Can I have a cup of matcha?
Or maybe
bed?
of chamomile tea, maybe.
Chamomile tea
would
might
be
be better. But thank you so much for both of those stories. And of course, to our guest today, Arabiya editor Wissam Keyrouz, and managing director of This Is Dubai, Michael Jabri-Pickett. And that's all from us on W News Extra. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and of course follow us on X, GNT with Michal Prendergast will be coming up next. Goodbye and thank you.